In this Using Google Sheets API with Python lesson, we're going to learn how to read data from a Google Sheet file. So let me pull out the documentation. When you want to read data from a Google Sheet, there are two methods you can use. Let me make the font size a little bit bigger. Under the spreadsheets.values resource, we can use the get method. The get method will return a range of values from a spreadsheet, and we must provide the spreadsheet ID and the range address. Or we can use the batch get method. The batch get method will return one or more ranges of values from a spreadsheet. And again, we need to specify the spreadsheet ID and also need to provide multiple ranges object in case if we want to return multiple cell ranges. Now let me show you the spreadsheet we'll be using for this exercise. So from my first Google Sheet file, I have 4 different worksheets: sales north, east, west, and south. And in each tab, I have the same table except that the quantity and unit price numbers are different. Oh, and as well as the invoice number is also different. And we can identify which tab this table belongs to based on the first digit of the invoice number. If an invoice number starts with 2, then we know it's going to be on the Sales East tab. And for the West number, it's going to be 300, South will be 400, and North will be 100. Now let's go back to Python editor, and we'll start with something basic. I'll show you how to use the get method first. So the get method will return just a single cell range of values. So here I already created a Python script, and I named the script readdata.py. And from this module, I import the OS module, and from the Google module, I'm importing the create service function. And for this exercise, I also want to use the pandas library. So I'll import the pandas module as PD. And this one's going to be example number 1. So get method, single cell range of values. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet. Right, so let's say I want to extract the first 3 rows of values or records. So it will be from row number 2 to row number 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a service object dot spreadsheets dot values dot get. So we're going to use the get method to extract the values. And here I need to insert the execute method as well. And we need to provide the spreadsheet ID. To get the spreadsheet ID, I need to go back to my Google Sheet file. And in my browser, I'm going to just copy my spreadsheet ID. And I'll store the spreadsheet ID in a variable. And I'll name this variable spreadsheet_ID. And once I have the spreadsheet ID, so I'm going to copy my spreadsheet ID variable, and I'm going to paste over to the spreadsheet ID parameter. Now let's go back to the documentation, and let me scroll down. So if we look at the parameters, so we need to provide the spreadsheet ID, the range, and also need to provide the major dimension value. It can be rows or columns. So I'll copy the parameter name. I'll paste over to my script. And I'm going to extract the values by rows. And for the range, we want to specify the range address. And since I want to extract the first 3 rows of records, so my cell address is going to be from B2 to F5. I'm going to type the address first, so B2 to F5. And because we have multiple worksheets, so I'm going to grab the worksheet name, sales north. I'm going to insert the worksheet name before the cell range address, followed by an explanation symbol. Now if I just select all the code I want to run and execute, oh, and have a typo. That's okay. Let me move the terminal panel to the right first. I think that'll be easier for you to see. And here I have a typo. This should be spreadsheets. Let me try again. So if I just highlight the code I want to run, and that executes successfully. And if we print the response object, we can see that it returns as a dictionary. Now let's see what keys the response object has. So the response object has 3 keys: range, measure dimension, and values. Now let me print each value. So response, and this one will be range, measure dimension, and values. I'm going to run line 26 to 28. The range key is going to return the range address. In this case will be sales north from cell B2 to F5. The measure dimension reference will return whether or not we are extracting the data by rows or by columns. And the values reference will return our data. And it's going to be a list within a list. And if we look at the values output, each record is stored in a list object. And the first list element is our column headers. And the remaining elements are my records, so my data basically. And for me to present in the data in a table format, I like to use the pandas library to manipulate my data as well as to store the data as a tabular layout. So here what we can do is we can create our columns. From the response object, we want to reference the values key. And we know the column is going to be the first element. So we're going to just grab the first element. For the records, I'm going to name the object as data. From response object, I want to reference the values key. And I'm going to just grab the remaining elements. So it's going to be from 1 all the way to wherever the last item is. Now we can create our data frame object. Should be capital D. I'll pass the data object. For the columns, I'll pass the columns object. Now if I run these 3 lines, if I print the data frame object, and that returns my result set as a table. In case if I want to use the invoice column as the index, what you can do is you can take the data frame object, you can reset the index. So I'm going to use the setIndex method, and here I'll provide the column header name, and it will be invoice. And I'm going to name the output as df2. So this should be I, not L. Now if I print the df2 object, the index column is replaced by the invoice column. Now let's move on to example number 2. And we'll still be using the get method, except that I'm going to show you how to dynamically extract the table, regardless how many rows or records a table contains. Now let's assume that you work in a finance department, and some of your colleagues will sometimes delete or add multiple entries. And when we write the Python script, so we can return how many rows of records we have, so we can manually assign the cell address. In this example, we now want to extract the data from B2 to F2. But in the real scenario, we don't know how many rows or records we have. And fortunately, there's a pretty easy way to do it, but it's not pretty. So here I'm going to copy line 18 to line 22. And to extract the entire data set, all we need to do is we just need to provide the worksheet name. I'm going to delete the reference, and that just leaves us with the worksheet name. Now if I run the select code, and if I print the values, now if we look at the output is going to be pretty similar. Because my table starts in column B2, so I have 1 extra empty row and 1 extra empty column. So that's why the first element is returning us an empty list. And for each record, if we look at each list object, the first element is also an empty string. If we try to create a data frame object, so here let me grab these 4 lines. If I try to create a data frame object, and let me delete these. Let me run these 3 lines again. And here we're going to get an assertion error. 0 columns passed. Past data had 6 columns. So to fix the issue, we need to slice the data to ignore the empty row and the empty column. Let me reprint the values. And looking at this result set, I know my first element is empty. So to grab the column, I'm going to start from the second list object. And I'm going to grab my column name from the second item. So be from 1 all the way to the last item. And this will return the label names. Now if I print the columns object, and that'll give us the correct column headers. And for the data, so I'm going to change the reference from 2 to the last item. And to extract the data, I like to use list comprehension to do this task. And here I'm going to say that for item in response from this output. We know the first item is going to be empty string, so we're going to skip the first item and extract the data from the second item to the last item. Now if I run lines 49, if I print the data object, and that returns the correct result set. And once we have the correct columns in the data, we can create our data frame object. If I print my data frame object, and that returns the table with all the records. Now if I go back and let's say I want to add a couple more items, I'm going to change this from 109 all the way to, let's see, I don't know how many records I have, right, to 114. Now if I run this select code, now if I print the df object, and that will dynamically return all the records. Right, so that's for the get method. And I want to move on to the batch get method to return multiple cell ranges. So this one will be example number 3, and batch get method. Now let me pull out the documentation. Let's see. The batch get method returns one or more ranges or values from a spreadsheet. And let's look at the parameters real quick. And same with the get method, we need to provide the spreadsheet ID. And instead of range, we need to use ranges. So per. And the measure dimension is going to be the same. And we don't need to provide the request body. So here I think they made a mistake. The ranges parameter should take a list, not a string. So here let's go back to our Python editor. Here I'll create a list object, and I'll name this object value ranges underscore body. Inside this values range body list, I want to type all the cell reference that I want to extract from my spreadsheet. For sales notes worksheet, I want to extract the table from B2 to F17. So B2 to F17. And the worksheet name is going to be sales notes. For the remaining of the worksheets, all the tables is going to be from B2 to F11. So this one is going to be sales. Sales. And B2 to F11. And I'll just make 2 more copies. And I'll just change the reference. So west and east. I'm going to copy these 5 lines, and I'll just paste them over. I'm going to change my parameter from range to ranges. Is equals to value ranges body. I also need to update the method name to batch get. Here I want to print my response keys. Now if I just hide the code I want to run and run it, from the response.keys, instead of 3 keys, we are now only getting 2 keys, spreadsheet ID and value ranges. The spreadsheet ID reference will return the spreadsheet ID. If we print the value ranges reference, and that returns as a list. Inside this list is going to contain a list of range objects. And from previous examples, we know a range object has range, major dimension, and values. Now we're dealing with multi-dimension of data type. And for me, what I usually like to do is I'll create a dictionary, and I'll name this dictionary data set. I'm going to insert a loop. I'm going to say that for item in response, and I'll provide the value ranges output. And I'll store each range object inside this data set dictionary. So I'm going to insert the range reference is equals to item with the values. There are many different ways you can organize the data set. I know some people like to store the data set in a database such as SQL Server, SQLite, but for me I like to use pandas just because it's much easier for me to manipulate the data set. And if I need to, pandas library already has some built-in functionality to integrate with different database systems. Now let me just run these 3 lines by itself. Now if I print the data set object, it's going to return the dictionary. Now if I print the keys, and each key is going to be the cell address of the data set. If I grab this key, and from the data set object, I'm going to assign the key, and I'll print the output. And that returns the data set belongs to sales nodes B2 to F17. And if I want to translate the tables to data frames, so I'll do the same. I'll create a dictionary, and here I'm going to use the enumerate function and to return the key and the index value. So insert the data set dictionary, and here I'm going to say that for index and key, from enumerate data set, and to extract the columns, we want to provide the key, and it's going to be the first column. And for the data, we want to provide the key as well, and it's going to be from the second item to the last item. And I can store the data frame object to the df dictionary. I'm going to use the index as my key is equals to pd.dataframe. I'll provide the data in the columns. Now I'm going to run the select code. If I print the df keys, and we know each key is an index value, so if I print df, and I will send 0, and that's going to return the data frame result set of the sales nodes data. if I want to print the sales is data, so I can assign the index value 1. And that gives me the table of sales. Actually, that should be sales, because the invoice style is 400. And this will give us the data sets of the table in sales worksheet. So this is everything I'm going to cover in this video. For the next lesson, I'll show you how to perform basic data formatting using the Google Sheets API.